In a crowded spaceport on the edge of the Andromeda sector, a group of skilled mercenaries moved with quiet purpose. They called themselves the Iron Veil, and they were about to pull off their most dangerous mission yet. Their target was Lily Monroe, the teenage daughter of Marcus Monroe, a man known across galaxies for his cold efficiency and unmatched skill in dealing with threats to humanity. While Marcus was away leading a major military operation against an alien insurgency, the Iron Veil saw their chance. The team had spent weeks planning every detail. They knew Marcus's estate on Epsilon Prime was heavily guarded, protected by advanced security systems and trained personnel. But Vanessa Cole, the leader of the Iron Veil, wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She had gathered intel through a double agent working inside Marcus's inner circle. With this information, she devised a plan that relied on speed, stealth, and precise execution. On the night of the operation, the mercenaries approached the estate under the cover of darkness. Using advanced cloaking devices, they slipped past the outer defenses without triggering any alarms. Inside the mansion, everything seemed calm. Guards patrolled the halls, unaware of the intruders moving like shadows among them. Vanessa led her team with confidence, each step calculated to avoid detection. Lily, meanwhile, was in her room, completely oblivious to the danger closing in. She sat at her desk, sketching designs for a new type of starship engine, something she enjoyed doing in her free time. Her father often teased her about her fascination with engineering, but he secretly admired her talent. As she worked, she hummed softly to herself, lost in thought. Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out entirely. At first, Lily assumed it was just another power fluctuation, something that occasionally happened on Epsilon Prime. But when the emergency lights failed to come on, she felt a pang of unease. She stood up and cautiously opened her door, peering into the dark hallway. That's when she saw them, 3 figures moving silently toward her room. Before she could react, one of them grabbed her arm and covered her mouth with a gloved hand. "Don't scream," a low voice whispered. "We're not here to hurt you." Lily struggled, but the grip was firm. Another figure quickly injected her with a sedative, and within moments, her vision blurred and her legs gave way. As she slipped into unconsciousness, the last thing she saw was the masked face of Vanessa Cole watching her with icy determination. Outside, the rest of the Iron Veil worked quickly to erase all traces of their presence. They disabled surveillance cameras, wiped digital logs, and neutralized the guards without leaving a mark. By the time Marcus returned home hours later, there was no sign of what had happened, except for the empty room where his daughter had been. Marcus walked through the mansion, his sharp eyes scanning for anything unusual. When he reached Lily's room and found it deserted, his blood ran cold. He checked every corner, his mind racing with possibilities. It didn't take long for him to realize this wasn't a random break-in. Whoever had taken Lily knew exactly what they were doing, and why. Standing in the middle of the silent room, Marcus clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His reputation as the galaxy's deadliest human wasn't just a title, it was a warning. And now someone had tested him in the worst possible way. With a deep breath, he pulled out his communicator and began issuing orders to his loyal fleet. His voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable edge of fury. "They took her," he said, his words cutting through the static. "Find them. Bring her back." Marcus Monroe stood in the center of Lily's empty room, his mind racing. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in on him. His daughter was gone, taken from under his nose while he was away fighting battles that now seemed meaningless. He had always prided himself on being unstoppable, a man who could handle any threat with precision and power. But this was different. This wasn't just an attack on his empire or his reputation. This was personal. He walked slowly around the room, examining every detail. The bed was still neatly made, the desk cluttered with papers and sketches of starship engines, a hobby Lily had picked up years ago. A half-empty glass of water sat on the nightstand, condensation forming tiny droplets on its surface. Whoever had done this hadn't left much behind, but Marcus knew better than to believe they'd vanish without a trace. Someone, somewhere, would have answers. His first move was to check the security systems. If anyone had breached them, it would take a professional, or someone with inside knowledge. Marcus accessed the main terminal in his office and began reviewing the logs. To his frustration, everything appeared normal until about 2 hours before his return. Then suddenly, there was nothing. No footage, no alerts, no records of activity. It was as if time itself had been erased. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. Inside job, he muttered under his breath. Someone close to him had betrayed him. The thought burned like acid in his chest. He trusted very few people, but those he did trust were part of his inner circle. If one of them had sold him out, they would pay dearly. Determined to find answers, Marcus activated his private fleet. Ships loyal only to him began mobilizing across the galaxy, their crews ready to follow his orders without question. He also reached out to a network of informants scattered throughout the stars. These were men and women who owed him favors, some more willingly than others. Within minutes, messages were sent, and channels were opened. The hunt for Lily was underway. But Marcus didn't stop there. He decided to start closer to home. There was a cantina on Delta IV, a rough-and-tumble spaceport known for attracting mercenaries, smugglers, and other unsavory characters. It was the kind of place where secrets were traded like currency. If anyone knew something about the Iron Veil, the group responsible for Lily's abduction, they'd likely hear whispers of it here. Before leaving, Marcus took one last look at his daughter's room. His heart ached in a way he hadn't felt in years. For all his strength and ruthlessness, he was still a father. And now his little girl was out there, scared and alone, because of him. He promised himself, and her, that he would bring her back, no matter the cost. The journey to Delta IV was short but tense. Marcus spent most of it going over potential leads in his head. When he arrived at the cantina, the scene was exactly what he expected. Dim lighting, loud music, and a mix of species packed into a cramped space. The smell of alcohol and sweat filled the air, but Marcus didn't care. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on a familiar face. Jake Rivers, a smuggler with loose morals and even looser lips. Jake was sitting at a corner table, nursing a drink and looking bored. Marcus approached him with deliberate steps, his presence commanding attention. The other patrons quickly cleared a path, sensing trouble. Jake looked up and froze when he saw who it was. "Monroe," he stammered, trying to sound casual. "What brings you here?" "You know why I'm here," Marcus replied, his voice low and dangerous. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from Jake, his piercing gaze never leaving the smuggler's face. "Talk." Jake hesitated, glancing around nervously. He knew better than to cross Marcus Monroe. After a moment, he sighed and leaned forward. "I've heard rumors," he admitted. "There's a group calling themselves the Iron Veil. They've been making moves lately, big ones. Word is, they're planning something involving your family." Marcus's expression darkened. "Where can I find them?" "They're supposed to meet at an old orbital station near the Kuiper Expanse," Jake said quickly, eager to avoid further confrontation. "That's all I know, I swear." Marcus studied him for a moment, then stood up without another word. He tossed a credit chip onto the table. It was far more than Jake deserved, but Marcus didn't care. Information was worth paying for, especially when it came to his daughter. As he left the cantina, Marcus's mind was already working on his next move. The Iron Veil had made a grave mistake by taking Lily. They might think they had the upper hand, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. Marcus Monroe wasn't just a man. He was a force of nature. And soon, they would learn that lesson the hard way. Vanessa Cole sat in the dimly lit control room of the Black Serpent, her stolen freighter, staring at the holographic map floating above the central console. Her sharp green eyes scanned the display as she plotted their next move. Around her, the rest of the Iron Veil worked quietly, some checking weapons, others monitoring communications, all focused on the task ahead. They were a tight-knit crew, each member chosen for their skill and loyalty. But even among them, Vanessa kept her true motives close to her chest. She turned to face her second-in-command, a wiry man named Alex Carter, who was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "How's the girl?" she asked, her tone calm but firm. "Still locked up," Alex replied. "She hasn't caused any trouble, but she's smart. I wouldn't underestimate her." Vanessa nodded, unsurprised. She had done her homework on Lily Monroe before the mission. The teenager wasn't just the daughter of Marcus Monroe. She was clever, resourceful, and had inherited her father's determination. That made her both valuable and dangerous. "Keep an eye on her," Vanessa said. "We can't afford mistakes now." Alex hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Do you really think this is going to work? Monroe isn't someone you mess with lightly." Vanessa smirked, a hint of arrogance flashing across her face. "That's why it'll work. He's not just anyone. He's predictable. Ruthless, yes, but also a father. And that makes him weak." She tapped the hologram, highlighting a derelict orbital station near the Kuiper expanse. "This is where we'll make our stand. Once he finds us, and he will, we'll have everything we need to bring him to his knees." Alex frowned, clearly uneasy. "And if he doesn't play along, what then?" "Then we use his weakness against him," Vanessa said simply. "Lily is leverage. Whether he trades secrets or tries to fight his way through, we win either way." Her confidence was infectious, but Alex still felt a pang of doubt. He had seen what Marcus Monroe was capable of, and the idea of facing him head-on didn't sit well. Still, he trusted Vanessa's judgment, or at least he wanted to. She had led them through countless missions, always coming out on top. This time would be no different, or so he hoped. Later, Vanessa called a meeting with the entire crew, gathered in the ship's common area. They listened intently as she laid out the plan. "Monroe thinks he's untouchable," she began, pacing back and forth. "But we've proven tonight that he's not. We've taken what matters most to him. And now we hold all the cards." She paused, letting her words sink in. The crew exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others looking skeptical. Vanessa noticed their hesitation and raised her voice slightly. "I know what you're thinking. This isn't like other jobs. It's bigger, riskier. But it's also our chance to prove ourselves, to show the galaxy that even the deadliest man alive has limits. And when we're done, we'll walk away with more power than any of us ever dreamed of." The room grew quiet as Vanessa activated another hologram, this one showing schematics of the orbital station. "Here's where we'll set the trap. It's remote, abandoned, and perfect for laying low until Monroe arrives. By the time he figures out what we're doing, it'll be too late." One of the crew members, a burly man named Derek, raised his hand. "What about the girl? What happens to her after we get what we want?" Vanessa's expression hardened. "That depends on Monroe. If he cooperates, she lives. If not..." She let the sentence hang unfinished, her meaning clear. Derek nodded slowly, though his discomfort was obvious. No one spoke for a moment, the weight of Vanessa's plan settling over them. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "When do we leave?" Vanessa smiled, a cold, calculated look in her eyes. "Now." As the crew dispersed to prepare for the journey, Vanessa stayed behind, staring once again at the holographic map. For all her bravado, she couldn't shake the feeling that this mission might change everything, for better or worse. But there was no turning back now. The pieces were in motion, and soon, Marcus Monroe would come for his daughter. When he did, Vanessa would be ready. Marcus Monroe stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dagger, staring out at the vast expanse of stars stretching endlessly before him. The ship hummed with quiet energy as its crew prepared for the journey to the Kuiper expanse. Every fiber of Marcus's being was focused on one thing: finding Lily. He had spent years building his empire, crushing enemies, and earning a reputation that struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest warriors. But none of that mattered now. All he cared about was bringing his daughter home. The information Jake Rivers had provided was thin, but it was enough to give Marcus a direction. An old orbital station near the Kuiper Expanse. That was where the Iron Veil planned to make their stand. Marcus knew these kinds of places well. Abandoned, isolated, and easy to defend. It would be a challenge to break through, but challenges were nothing new to him. What worried him more was the time it would take to get there. Every second felt like an eternity, and he couldn't shake the image of Lily alone and scared, wondering if he would come for her. As the ship moved through hyperspace, Marcus called Ryan Dawson to the bridge. Ryan was a former soldier who had once worked under Victor Kane, a ruthless warlord Marcus had crossed paths with many times. Recently, however, Ryan had grown disillusioned with Kane's methods and sought refuge with Marcus. Though Marcus didn't fully trust him yet, Ryan's knowledge of Kane's operations could prove useful. Ryan entered the bridge and saluted awkwardly, unsure of how to act around someone as intimidating as Marcus. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, his voice steady despite the nervousness in his eyes. "I need your insight," Marcus said without preamble. "Kane has ties to the Iron Veil. Tell me everything you know." Ryan nodded and stepped closer. "Kane sees opportunities in chaos. If he knows the Iron Veil took Lily, he'll want a piece of the action. He might try to intercept them or even take her for himself. He loves making deals with dangerous people, especially if it means gaining power." Marcus's jaw tightened. Another variable to deal with. Where would he go? "There's a mining outpost on the edge of the Kuiper Expanse," Ryan explained. "It's small, but it's a good spot for ambushes. If Kane's involved, he'll likely use it as a staging ground." Marcus considered this for a moment. "Then we'll hit both targets, split my fleet, send half to the outpost, and I'll take the rest to the orbital station. If Kane shows up, we'll crush him. If not, we'll focus on the Iron Veil." Ryan hesitated, then spoke again. "What about Lily? If Kane gets to her first?" "He won't," Marcus interrupted sharply. His tone left no room for argument. "I'll tear apart every star system if I have to. She's my daughter, and I'm bringing her back." Ryan nodded silently, knowing better than to push further. Marcus turned away, ending the conversation. He trusted Ryan's information, but trust only went so far. In the end, Marcus relied on one person, and one person alone, to get the job done. Himself. Hours later, as the Crimson Dagger approached the Kuiper Expanse, Marcus reviewed the battle plans with his officers. They were ready, armed to the teeth, and prepared for anything. But Marcus knew better than to underestimate the Iron Veil, or Kane, for that matter. These were professionals, just like him. And they wouldn't go down without a fight. When the orbital station finally came into view, Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. It was exactly as Jake had described. Dark, desolate, and eerily silent. The perfect hiding place. Through the viewport, he could see the faint outline of the station floating against the backdrop of stars. Somewhere inside, Lily was waiting. "Prepare the boarding teams," Marcus ordered, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. "We move in 10 minutes. As the crew scrambled to carry out his orders, Marcus allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He thought about Lily, the way she used to laugh when he told her stories about his adventures, the way her eyes lit up whenever she talked about her designs. She was strong, just like her mother had been. Stronger than most people realized. Wherever she was, whatever she was facing, Marcus knew she wouldn't give up, and neither would he. With a deep breath, Marcus grabbed his blaster and headed for the hangar bay. The time for planning was over. Now it was time to act. Lily Monroe sat on the cold metal floor of her cell, her knees pulled up to her chest. The room was small and dimly lit, with no windows or furniture, just 4 walls, and a heavy door that locked from the outside. She had been here for hours, Maybe longer, though it was hard to tell without a clock or any sense of time passing. Despite the chill in the air, beads of sweat formed on her forehead. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what was happening. At first, Lily had felt nothing but fear, being grabbed in the middle of the night, injected with something that made her dizzy and weak. It was like something out of a bad dream. But as the initial shock wore off, her instincts kicked in. She reminded herself of who her father was. Marcus Monroe didn't raise quitters. If anyone could find her, it was him. Until then, she had to stay strong. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, looking for anything she could use to her advantage. The cell wasn't completely empty. In one corner, there was a loose bolt lying on the floor, likely fallen from the wall panel above it. It wasn't much, but Lily knew even small things could make a big difference if used correctly. Using her sleeve to avoid leaving fingerprints, she picked up the bolt and tucked it into her pocket. Next, she turned her attention to the surveillance drone hovering near the ceiling. Its red lens glowed faintly as it rotated slowly, watching her every move. Lily frowned. As long as it was there, they could see everything she did. She needed to disable it, or at least distract it. Thinking quickly, she grabbed the thin blanket from the floor and bunched it up in her hands. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, she threw it over the drone, covering its lens. The machine buzzed angrily, spinning faster as it tried to shake off the fabric. While it was distracted, Lily climbed onto the bed frame bolted to the wall and reached up toward the panel where the bolt had fallen from earlier. Her fingers trembled as she worked the edges of the panel loose, but eventually it came free. Behind the panel, she found a tangle of wires. Some were thick and coated in rubber, while others were thin and delicate. Lily hesitated for a moment, then remembered something her father had once told her: always aim for the power source. She spotted a black wire connected to what looked like a small battery pack. Taking a deep breath, she used the bolt to cut through the wire. The drone sputtered and went silent, dropping to the floor with a dull thud. Lily let out a shaky sigh of relief. It wasn't much, but disabling the camera gave her a sliver of hope. Now, if she could just figure out how to escape. As she worked, Lily listened carefully to the sounds outside her cell. Footsteps echoed down the hallway occasionally, along with muffled voices. Most of the time, though, it was quiet. Too quiet. She wondered how far away her father was. Was he coming for her? Did he even know where she was? Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, throwing Lily off balance. She stumbled forward, catching herself against the wall. Alarms blared overhead, loud and piercing. Someone shouted orders in the distance, their voice tense and hurried. Whatever was happening, it wasn't part of the plan. Lily pressed her ear to the door, straining to hear more. There were shouts, explosions, and the unmistakable sound of blaster fire. Her heart raced as she realized what this meant. Someone had found them, and if she had to guess, it wasn't a coincidence. Taking a deep breath, Lily stepped back from the door and gripped the bolt tightly in her hand. She didn't know who was attacking the ship or why, but she knew one thing for sure: this was her chance. When the door opened, whether by friend or foe, she would be ready. The orbital station was a chaotic mess of flashing alarms, blaster fire, and shouting voices. Marcus Monroe led the charge, his blaster in one hand and a tactical scanner in the other. Behind him, his team moved with precision, clearing each corridor as they advanced. The station's narrow hallways and low ceilings made it difficult to maneuver, but Marcus didn't care. He had one goal: find Lily. As they pushed deeper into the station, resistance grew fiercer. Members of the Iron Veil fought back with surprising skill, their movements calculated and efficient. Marcus recognized Vanessa Cole's influence in their tactics. She was good, very good, but not good enough. Every time an enemy tried to block his path, Marcus took them down without hesitation. His expression remained calm, almost cold, but inside, his heart pounded with urgency. Ryan Dawson stayed close to Marcus, providing cover fire and keeping an eye out for traps. "They're trying to slow us down," Ryan said between shots. "If we don't move faster, they'll regroup." Marcus nodded sharply. "Then we don't stop. Not for anything." Up ahead, a door slid open, revealing a group of mercenaries waiting in ambush. They opened fire immediately, forcing Marcus and his team to take cover behind a stack of crates. Blaster bolts ricocheted off the metal walls, filling the air with sparks and smoke. Marcus peeked around the corner, assessing the situation. There were 6 of them, heavily armed and well-positioned. "Grenade," Marcus ordered, holding out his hand. One of his soldiers quickly handed him a small explosive device. With practiced ease, Marcus pulled the pin and tossed it into the room. A loud bang echoed through the hallway as the grenade detonated, sending debris flying. When the dust settled, Marcus stepped forward, firing his blaster to neutralize anyone still standing. The fight wasn't over yet. More mercenaries appeared, pouring in from side corridors and stairwells. It seemed like every step forward brought new enemies, but Marcus refused to slow down. Each shot he fired brought him closer to Lily. He could feel it. Meanwhile, chaos erupted elsewhere on the station. Victor Kane's forces had arrived, storming the facility with brutal efficiency. Kane himself led the attack, his towering frame clad in black armor that gleamed under the flickering lights. His voice boomed through the halls as he barked orders to his men. "Find the girl. Bring her to me alive." Kane's arrival complicated things. Now, Marcus wasn't just fighting the Iron Veil. He also had to contend with Kane's ruthless warriors. The two groups clashed violently, turning the station into a war zone. Explosions rocked the structure, and the smell of scorched metal filled the air. Amid the confusion, Lily heard the commotion growing louder. The sounds of battle were closer now, reverberating through the walls of her cell. She gripped the bolt tightly in her hand, her knuckles white with tension. Whoever was winning the fight would reach her soon, and she needed to be ready. Suddenly, the door to her cell hissed open. Lily tensed, expecting the worst. But instead of a mercenary or one of Kane's soldiers, she saw Marcus standing there, his face streaked with sweat and soot. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, with a cry of relief, Lily ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I knew you'd come." Marcus held her tightly, his eyes closing briefly as he absorbed the weight of the moment. "You're safe now," he said, his voice rough but filled with emotion. "Let's get out of here." But their reunion was short-lived. A loud crash echoed down the hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots running toward them. Marcus turned, raising his blaster as Vanessa Cole appeared at the far end of the corridor. Her expression was grim but determined. "You think this is over?" she spat, aiming her weapon at Marcus. "It's not even close." Before either side could act, another explosion shook the station, knocking everyone off balance. Sparks rained down from the ceiling, and part of the wall collapsed, separating Marcus and Lily from Vanessa. Seizing the opportunity, Marcus grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her away, heading for the nearest exit. Behind them, Vanessa cursed under her breath. "After them," she shouted to her remaining crew. But the station was falling apart around them, making pursuit nearly impossible. As Marcus guided Lily through the wreckage, he glanced back only once. His eyes burned with resolve. This wasn't over, not yet. But for now, his priority was clear: getting his daughter to safety. Everything else could wait. The escape from the orbital station was anything but smooth. Marcus held Lily's hand tightly as they navigated through the crumbling corridors, dodging falling debris and bursts of blaster fire. The air was thick with smoke, making it hard to breathe, and the ground shook constantly from explosions that seemed to come from every direction. Behind them, shouts echoed, some belonging to Vanessa Cole's mercenaries, others to Victor Kane's soldiers. But Marcus didn't look back. His focus was on one thing: getting Lily out alive. "Stay close," Marcus said, his voice firm despite the chaos around them. He glanced at Lily, noting the streaks of dirt on her face and the way her hands trembled slightly. She nodded, her grip tightening on his hand. For all her bravery, she was still just a teenager, and the weight of what had happened was written across her expression. Marcus felt a surge of anger, not at her, but at himself. This never should have happened. He should have protected her better. They reached a junction where the hallway split in two directions. Marcus paused, consulting the small scanner in his free hand. The device showed multiple heat signatures converging on their location. "We need to move faster," he muttered under his breath. Without hesitation, he chose the left path, pulling Lily along with him. Up ahead, a massive blast tore through the ceiling, sending chunks of metal raining down. Marcus shoved Lily to the side just in time, shielding her body with his own. The impact knocked the wind out of him, but he forced himself to stand, ignoring the sharp pain in his ribs. "Are you okay?" he asked, brushing dust off her shoulders. "I'm fine," Lily replied, though her voice wavered. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear, but also determination. "Let's keep going." Marcus nodded, impressed by her resilience. They pressed on, finally reaching a service ladder that led to an upper level. "Climb," he instructed, giving her a boost. Lily scrambled upward quickly, her movements surprisingly steady despite everything. Once she was safely above, Marcus followed, his muscles burning with effort. At the top, they emerged into a large hangar bay filled with ships. Most were damaged or abandoned, but one vessel caught Marcus's eye, a sleek transport ship tucked away in the corner. Its engines hummed softly, suggesting it was ready to fly. "That's our ride," he said, pointing toward it. Before they could reach the ship, however, a group of Kane's soldiers appeared, blocking their path. Their leader, a burly man with a scared face, raised his weapon and sneered. "Going somewhere, Monroe." Marcus stepped in front of Lily protectively, his blaster already aimed at the intruders. "You don't want this fight," he warned, his tone icy. "Step aside." The soldier laughed bitterly. "Kane wants the girl. And what Kane wants, Kane gets." For a moment, no one moved. Then, without warning, the soldier fired. Marcus reacted instantly, pulling Lily to the ground as the shot whizzed past. Returning fire, he took down two of the soldiers in quick succession. The rest scattered for cover, exchanging shots with Marcus as he advanced. Lily stayed low, watching in awe as her father fought with precision and strength. She wanted to help, but she knew this wasn't her battle. Instead, she scanned the area, searching for anything useful. Her eyes landed on a loose panel near the wall. Inside, she spotted a bundle of wires leading to a nearby console. An idea formed in her mind. While Marcus kept the enemy occupied, Lily crawled over to the panel and began working on the wires. She remembered something her father had taught her about disabling systems, and if she was right, she could shut down the hangar doors temporarily, trapping the soldiers inside. The firefight grew more intense as Marcus ran out of cover. Bullets grazed his arm, drawing blood, but he didn't falter. Just as he prepared to make a final push, the hangar lights flickered and went out. A loud grinding noise followed as the heavy doors slammed shut, sealing the remaining soldiers inside. "What did you do?" Marcus asked, turning to Lily with a mix of surprise and pride. "I fixed it," she said simply, standing up and brushing herself off. Her face lit up with a small smile. "Told you I'd be ready." Marcus couldn't help but chuckle, though the sound was strained. "Remind me to teach you more tricks when we get home." With the immediate threat neutralized, they hurried to the transport ship. Marcus climbed into the cockpit, running a quick diagnostic check, while Lily secured herself in the passenger seat. The engines roared to life, and within moments, they were lifting off, leaving the burning wreckage of the orbital station behind. As they broke through the atmosphere and entered open space, Lily leaned back in her seat, finally allowing herself to relax. Marcus glanced at her, his expression softening. "You did good back there," he said quietly. "I'm proud of you." Lily smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Does this mean we're safe now? Marcus hesitated before answering. Not yet, but we will be. He turned his attention to the controls, plotting a course for Epsilon Prime. For the first time since the ordeal began, he allowed himself a moment of relief. They weren't out of danger, but they had taken a crucial step toward freedom. And together, they would face whatever came next. The transport ship soared through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming steadily as it carried Marcus and Lily away from the chaos of the orbital station. For the first time in what felt like days, they had a moment to breathe. The cabin was quiet except for the soft beeping of the control panel and the occasional creak of the ship's frame as it adjusted to the vacuum outside. Marcus kept his eyes on the navigation screen, ensuring their course remained steady, but his mind was elsewhere. Lily sat in the passenger seat, staring out the viewport at the endless sea of stars. Her reflection in the glass showed a face marked by exhaustion and stress, yet there was also a glimmer of hope. She glanced at her father, taking in the cuts and bruises on his arms and the dark circles under his eyes. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly, breaking the silence. Marcus shook his head without looking at her. "Just scratches," he replied. His tone was calm, almost dismissive, but Lily knew better. She had seen him fight, not just today, but countless times before, and she understood the toll it took on him. Still, he never let it show. Not until now. "Dad," she said after a pause, her voice firmer this time. "Thank you for coming for me." Marcus finally turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll always come for you," he said simply, "no matter what." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Lily nodded, blinking back tears. She wanted to say more, to tell him how scared she had been, how much she admired his strength, but the lump in her throat made it hard to speak. Instead, she leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes, letting the quiet comfort of being safe wash over her. But safety was fleeting. As they approached the edge of the Kuiper expanse, an alarm blared suddenly, jolting both of them awake. Marcus cursed under his breath as he scanned the controls. "We've got company," he muttered, pointing to a cluster of red dots appearing on the radar. They were surrounded. Vanessa Cole's voice crackled over the comm system moments later. "You didn't think we'd let you go that easily, did you?" she sneered. Her image appeared on the small screen above the dashboard, calm, composed, and utterly ruthless. "Hand over the girl, Monroe, and maybe I'll let you live." Marcus clenched his jaw, his fingers tightening around the controls. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," he replied, his voice dripping with disdain. "But you're not getting her." Vanessa smirked. "Then you leave me no choice." With that, the transmission cut off, leaving behind only static. Outside the ship, 3 sleek fighters emerged from the darkness, their weapons locked onto the transport. Lily gripped the armrests of her seat, her heart racing. "What do we do?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He focused on maneuvering the ship, dodging the first wave of laser fire with practiced skill. The transport wasn't built for combat, but it was fast, and Marcus intended to use that to his advantage. "Hold on," he warned, pushing the throttle forward. The ship shot ahead, weaving through the enemy fighters' attacks. Blasts lit up the darkness around them, illuminating the cockpit in flashes of red and blue. Marcus worked the controls with precision, his years of experience guiding every move. Despite the odds, he managed to slip past 2 of the ships, forcing them to overshoot their target. 1 fighter remained, however, dogging their tail with relentless determination. Vanessa's voice returned over the comms. "Give it up, Monroe. You can't win this." Marcus ignored her, instead focusing on a risky plan forming in his mind. Spotting a nearby asteroid field, he angled the ship toward it. "Hang tight," he told Lily again, his voice grim. "This might get rough." The asteroids loomed larger as they approached, jagged rocks spinning lazily in the void. Marcus navigated the narrow gaps between them, using the terrain to his advantage. Behind them, the pursuing fighter struggled to keep up, its pilot forced to slow down to avoid collisions. Finally, Marcus spotted his opportunity, a massive asteroid directly in their path. At the last second, he pulled up sharply, sending the transport soaring over the rock. The fighter, unable to react in time, slammed into the asteroid's surface, exploding in a brilliant burst of light. For a moment, the cockpit was silent. Then Lily exhaled shakily. Did we lose them? Marcus checked the radar again, confirming that the remaining ships had fallen behind. For now, he said cautiously. But Vanessa won't stop. Not until she gets what she wants. Lily frowned. What does she want? Why is she doing all this? The transport ship limped through space, its hull scorched and systems strained from the recent battle. Marcus knew they couldn't keep running forever. Vanessa Cole was persistent, and sooner or later, she would catch up to them. He needed a plan, and fast. As they approached a remote asteroid colony, Marcus made a decision. It wasn't ideal, but it was their best chance. The colony was small, barely more than a mining outpost, but it had one advantage: it was isolated. If Vanessa followed them here, she'd have to come in quietly, or risk drawing attention from other factions who might interfere. For now, staying off her radar was key. Landing the damaged ship in a hidden alcove on the asteroid's surface, Marcus turned to Lily. "We're going to lay low for a bit," he explained. "But we need supplies, and I need to figure out our next move." Lily nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. She had proven herself resourceful during the escape, but this was different. They were cornered, outnumbered, and outgunned. Still, she refused to let fear take hold. "What can I do?" she asked. Marcus hesitated before answering. "Stay close. Keep your eyes open. And if anything happens, anything, you run. Do you understand?" She didn't argue, knowing he was right. This wasn't just about survival. It was about keeping her safe at all costs. They ventured into the colony, blending in with the miners and traders who called the place home. The air smelled of dust and machinery, and the dim lights cast long shadows across the narrow streets. Marcus kept his blaster hidden under his coat, scanning the area for threats. So far, there was no sign of Vanessa or her crew. But that wouldn't last long. While Marcus searched for information, Lily wandered near a market stall selling spare parts. Her sharp eyes caught sight of something familiar. A piece of tech bearing the emblem of the Iron Veil. Her heart raced as she realized what it meant. Vanessa was already here. Before she could warn Marcus, a hand clamped down on her shoulder. Startled, she spun around to see a man with cold, calculating eyes. "You shouldn't be poking around," he said, his voice low. Before she could react, another figure stepped forward. It was Vanessa Cole herself. Well, Vanessa sneered, circling Lily like a predator. "Looks like we found you after all." Marcus noticed Lily's absence almost immediately. Panic surged through him as he retraced his steps, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. When he reached the market, he saw them. Vanessa holding Lily by the arm, her weapon trained on the girl's head. Around them, mercenaries materialized from the shadows, cutting off any chance of escape. "Let her go," Marcus growled, raising his own blaster. His finger hovered over the trigger, but he couldn't take the shot, not with Lily in the line of fire. Vanessa smiled cruelly. "Drop your weapon, Monroe, or I'll make sure she regrets it." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Marcus weighed his options, his mind racing. Finally, he lowered his blaster, letting it clatter to the ground. "Take me instead," he said. "Leave her out of this." Vanessa tilted her head, considering the offer. "Tempting," she admitted. "But I think I'll keep both of you, for now." Her men moved in, restraining Marcus and forcing him to his knees. Lily struggled against Vanessa's grip, but the mercenary leader tightened her hold, twisting her arm painfully. "Be still," Vanessa hissed, "unless you want to lose that hand." Defeated, for the moment, Marcus locked eyes with Lily. Though he couldn't speak, his message was clear: wait for your chance. The mercenaries dragged them to a cavernous hangar deep within the colony. Inside, Vanessa activated a control panel, sealing the massive doors behind them. "This is where it ends," she said, pacing back and forth. "Tell me what I want to know, and maybe I'll let you die quickly." Marcus remained silent, his expression unreadable. But inside, his mind was working furiously. He scanned the room, noting the layout, the exits, the weak points in the structure. There had to be a way out. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed through the hangar. Dust fell from the ceiling as the floor trembled beneath their feet. One of Vanessa's men shouted, pointing toward the far wall. A section of it collapsed, revealing a group of armed figures led by Ryan Dawson. "Thought you could use some backup," Ryan said, stepping forward with his weapon raised. Behind him, Marcus's loyal soldiers flooded the room, engaging Vanessa's crew in a fierce firefight. Chaos erupted. Blaster bolts lit up the hangar as both sides exchanged fire. Marcus seized the opportunity, breaking free from his captors and tackling Vanessa to the ground. The two fought fiercely, trading punches until Marcus finally gained the upper hand, pinning her down. "It's over," he snarled, pressing his blaster to her temple. "Call off your men." Back on Epsilon Prime, the Monroe estate felt quieter than usual. The damage from the earlier attack had been repaired, but the scars, both visible and invisible, remained. Marcus stood in the grand living room, staring out at the sprawling gardens beyond the windows. His thoughts were heavy, weighed down by everything that had happened. Lily sat nearby, curled up on the couch with a sketchpad in her lap. She was drawing again, her pencil moving softly across the paper as if trying to make sense of the world through lines and shapes. For days after their return, neither of them spoke much about what they had endured. There was no need. They both carried the memories. The fear, the anger, the relief, and those memories bound them together in ways words never could. But now, as the dust settled and life began to feel normal again, Marcus knew they couldn't avoid the conversation forever. "Lily," he said finally, turning away from the window. His voice was gentle, almost hesitant. "Are you okay?" She looked up from her drawing, surprised by the question. After a moment, she nodded. "I think so. It's weird, though. Like part of me feels like it didn't really happen." Marcus walked over and sat beside her, his large frame dwarfing the delicate furniture. "It did happen," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry. None of this should have touched you." Lily set her sketchpad aside and studied him. For as long as she could remember, her father had been a man of action, a force to be reckoned with. But now, sitting here, he looked tired. Vulnerable, even. It was strange, seeing him like this. "It's not your fault," she said firmly. "You didn't ask for any of this." He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Maybe not, but being who I am puts people in danger. Especially you." The room fell silent as his words hung in the air. Lily thought about all the times she'd heard stories of her father's exploits, tales of battles fought and enemies defeated. Growing up, she had always admired his strength, his determination. But now she saw the cost of that legacy, the loneliness, the constant vigilance, the sacrifices. And yet, despite everything, she still loved him fiercely. "You can't change who you are, Dad," she said after a while. "But maybe you don't have to carry all of it alone anymore." Her words struck a chord deep within Marcus. He had spent years building walls around himself, convinced that isolation was the only way to keep others safe. But Lily had proven stronger than he ever imagined, not just during the kidnapping, but in how she faced the aftermath. She wasn't afraid to stand by him, even when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. "You're right," Marcus admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I've spent too long pushing people away. I don't want to do that anymore." Lily smiled faintly, reaching out to take his hand. "Then let's start over. Together." Over the following weeks, Marcus began making changes. He dismantled parts of his empire, stepping back from the violent conflicts that had once consumed him. Some of his allies questioned his decision, but Marcus didn't care. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope for peace, for redemption, and for a chance to truly be a father. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the estate, Marcus joined Lily in the garden. She was tinkering with a small drone she had built, its rotors whirring softly as it hovered above the grass. Watching her work, Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. "What do you think?" Lily asked, looking up at him with a grin. "Think it'll hold up in a fight?" Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "Let's hope we never have to find out." They shared a laugh, the sound mingling with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. In that moment, surrounded by beauty and quiet, Marcus realized something important. The galaxy might still be full of danger, but as long as he had Lily by his side, he could face anything. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt at peace.